The CUR is really a cost usage report. This is a large, detailed bill of everything that you're using AWS for. So this is literally your billing source of truth. So if you're going to get charged, this is where it's going to be. And the CUR ends up in S3 as Parquet file. So it's done daily. It lands there daily. It's not happening by the hour, but happens every day. And then the way you kind of look into it is using Athena. So you fire up Athena, and then you can run query. So the thing about the CUR, it doesn't actually show up. Some of the fields don't necessarily show up in Cost Explorer. So just so you know. Okay, so now we got the CUR. You guys know that. I mention it because that's really the billing source of truth. But there was also a change, actually just 2 days ago, related to the CUR that you may not have heard about. If you work with the CUR a lot, this is something you probably haven't heard about. A recent release that we did for the CUR added a new line, or at least a new line item, a new column inside the CUR, which we call IAM principle. So this is pretty new. Basically, I had to redo some of the slides here because it just got dropped. So what it does for you is be able to have a new dimension of understanding who actually made the cost, right? So before, as you might imagine, we didn't have that IAM principle there, which meant you cannot discern who made the cost. You can only see where the cost ended up, right? So now that you have the CUR in place, there's a lot of different fields inside the cost and usage report. I just narrow it down for Bedrock here. So with that, you're able to see that the cost breakdown on Athena, similar like this. So because your VP is asking who actually spent the most on Bedrock, then you can go in and see that Bob Martinez spent a ton of money on Bedrock, specifically on output tokens. You can also see that Bob Martinez spent 3,000 on input tokens. Good, so now you have some visibility on where the money is, which person is spending much. And you can also look now I know that Carol Johnson is using Novelite and is spending this much. And then I can look at Frank Garcia using Haiku, which is a more lighter model, right? So you have more understanding. Now you can go back to your VP and tell him, now I know where our money is spending, who's using what. Maybe Bob Martinez is our champion for Bedrock because he's been using it a ton. Okay, so good. Your VP comes in and then sees it. Now imagine the VP comes back, right? Now the VP says, no, Franklin, this is good. I saw you had, I'm able to see the per user cost on Athena, but the guys at finance came back and said, we don't use Athena, and we don't need to see per person. What we need to see is per team, and we need to see the cost center, right? And we want fancy graphs, so we want to use the Cost Explorer. So you said, okay, I'll come back, take a look. And the way you kind of do that is using AWS tags. And whenever you think about Cost Explorer, you think about tags. You think about cost allocation tags, right? So in tags look like this on AWS. There are a portion where you end up having to specify them. The thing about cost allocation tags is once you put them in, you have to activate them. Otherwise, they're just there. So once you activate the cost allocation tags, they'll end up in the CUR, where they can start getting picked up by Cost Explorer as filters. Remember, Cost Explorer has filters. Those are through cost allocation tags. Okay, so now that you know what tags is, the next thing you have to do is start tagging your users, right? So you need to tell user, hey, a user belongs to this particular team. A user belongs to this particular cost center. So, and it really just takes 2 CLI commands to start tagging them that way, or at least putting in those 2 tags. Now, This is probably a little bit of a simplification because there are other ways they could be using it beyond IAM user. They could be using roles, right? They could be using IMIDC, in which case they would be using a different mechanism. But I kept it simple, but the core idea is once you do some tagging, they would show up in Cur, which means they also end up in Cost Explorer. Okay, so now once you have them, they're activated, they will show up like this. On the right, you're going to see Cost Explorer, and on this example, it kind of breaks down per month which team the cost is going into. So now you can attribute from here which team is spending this much. So having that visibility is important for you to actually know which teams are working on Bedrock and how much they're spending. Okay, so now you're able to answer the question on Woo, and now you can answer the question on Team. You're able to see them on Athena, but you're also able to see them now for your finance team to see them on Cost Explorer. So great, right? Your VP is happy, and now they can do a little bit more work. Now, I kind of jumped it, but now the third question comes in. Sorry, cannot talk. I'm going to talk. The third thing now, you know the users, you know the team, but you don't know which project is spending Bedrock, right? Your VP comes back and says, Franklin, you know that 3 projects we released into production, and you know those projects we now have in the pipeline. I have no idea what we're spending on them, right? I don't know how much we spent during development. I don't know how we're spending on production. None of the reports service this. How do I figure that out? So the thing to do that right now is using inference profiles. If you haven't heard what inference profiles are, they're pretty much a wrapper around a model. So they kind of wrap 2 things. They wrap a model and they wrap tags. So always comes back to tags, right? So now because you can wrap them both together, now you can say for a particular model being used, I know this particular, it could be a particular project is using it and for this particular environment. As you can see in this example, a model like Claude Sonnet gets wrapped up. We give the inference profile a name, let's say chatbot prod, and then we ended up putting in the tags of the project, the environment, and that allows you to have that inference profile which you can swap out. Remember when you're using Bedrock, you use like invoke model, converse API. So instead of using that direct Claude Sonnet 4.6, whatever, you end up swapping in the inference profile. So now all calls made to that inference profile is being tagged. Okay? Okay, so that's great. Now it shows up in Cost Explorer. Now we have visibility into that cost. So per project will end up having their own inference profile. And this is what it kind of looks like, because we talked about having multiple users, multiple teams, right? Multiple projects. In this case, for the projects, you could be creating different profiles for every team for whatever workload they're running. In this case, they could have chatbots, they could have doc summarizers, apps, workflows running behind the scenes. And those could be pointed into inference profile. In the end, they'll be able to go into the Cost Explorer and be able to group by project and be able to say, hey, we're spending 1,200 for the customer chatbot, the DS doc, summarizer is spending like $374. So great. Your VP comes back and says, I'm very happy. Now I know when somebody proposed something, I can come back and say how much you're spending on it. I can look at your dev environments and figure out how much you're spending for that project you told me that's going to bring in this amount of money or bring in this amount of productivity. I can think about that a little bit better. And here's another example. Just wanted to show you how it looks like on the Cost Explorer. And this, I know this is a little bit small, but this kind of shows you the monthly spend, or at least somewhat monthly spend, or it looks like this is more around daily spend. of a stack graph of showing the different projects running. Kind of have an idea where the bulk of the money is going. You can see which projects are not spending as much. And you can slice and dice this however you want. Okay, so now we got answered the 3 questions. We answered who is spending on Bedrock. We answered which team. Now we can answer which project, or how much are we spending per project. Okay, now the 4th step is really about, it's probably the security part right here. I told you you can use inference profiles, but if people just swap it out, what's keeping them from not using it, right? What if somebody forgets, then yeah, you don't see the attribution, right? That's a gap. So with step 4, and this is probably the security piece, you need to implement policies in place. So you kind of end up denying use of the foundation model for certain types of roles, and then you only allow for inference profiles. So you do that using the policies, right? So a person, an app that's running will be tied to an inference profile. They ended up swapping it with the foundation model, it gets denied. So great. Now, I put down the one on the right because that model covers about 90% of a huge gamut of the use, at least the ones we're seeing. So we're good with that. But there are different elements, workloads running, like agents. They run as service roles. You have to apply it there. Flows, RAG, they're also running a service role. We also have Bedrock Mantle. I'm not going to cover that today, but that's our open API version for Bedrock. So that also has a different namespace altogether. And then batching, it also runs a little bit different. But majority of these would be covered by using those policies applied 90% of the time. Okay, so now you got lock it down. Now you can ensure compliance. Now when you tell your VP, okay, look at the cost explorer, you're gonna see the different projects running and how much they're costing. And by the way, I implemented security, the right policies in place so you can be sure they're actually going there and being used. Okay, good. So we're only step 4, it's about step 7. The next step is seeing it live. Like people will, so you got your VP asking, you got your finance team happy, but then your operations guy are coming back and say, hey, Franklin, all good, the curve's good, the graphs are good, but we at operations, we care about what's happening right now, right? If a guy is calling Bedrock and suddenly they have a runaway agent that starts calling them in a repeated fashion, unintended, big tokens, we ended up with a huge bill, right? How do we prevent that? And how do I make sure at the end of the day somebody doesn't come knocking because somebody wrote something bad and I end up with a huge pile of money they have to pay? And this is true. I mean, even me with customers, I have my own customers. I talk to customers a lot. I've had customers who end up spending 6 figures in 2 days on Bedrock. So it's hard to do that on AWS, right? But Bedrock is different because you're talking about large flagship models, tokens, and you can easily be building agents in such a way that they can cost money, right? So being able to see that live gives you that your operations team to be able to actually see and what's happening day to day. The way we do this is by enabling model invocation logging. So that grants you near real time. The model invocation logging is a setting within Bedrock. You toggle that on, and what happens is that Bedrock starts delivering the data and dumping it into CloudWatch. Now you see the data on CloudWatch. You get to see, like, for example, in that query underneath, you can see the identity ARN, the model ID, the output token count. You can do whatever you want. There's an input token. And the model invocation will even log the requests coming in and the responses, which is a lot. But that's a separate toggle. And you probably don't want to do that for a lot of reasons. When your CEO might not be happy with some of the stuff are logged. In any case, for operational, this gives you visibility whether Bob Martinez is actually running a test at the moment that's spiking things up. So So you can come back and ask him, hey, what is this? Is this expected? Or this app is currently doing running a spike. Are you running a test, or is this abnormal? Should we do something about it? Okay, so seeing it live is just one of the things that you could start doing now. Okay, so step 5, getting closer. Okay, and that's what it looks like. I love the real-time part, or the near real-time part, because it opens up a lot of visibility for you. And a lot of your operations team would be able to start creating CloudWatch dashboards here. Like they could see run by run on the right side for the different. I think those are I cannot see. Okay, those are different teams and users spending on Bedrock. And then on the right side, you can have I think those are the Bedrock invocations per hour. So you can kind of see them spiking during the day and tapering down during the evening. You'd see the invocations by inference profile, which means, as you can see, a lot of the invocations are being done on the inference profile because they're probably on the bigger projects that are running. Then you can group them output tokens by user. You can see which users are actually getting or spending more on output tokens. And you can see the overlay of input tokens versus output tokens. So just some of the dimensions you can start doing. Having the data reside on CloudWatch kind of gives you the ability to now leverage CloudWatch dashboards. Okay. Now we talk about guardrails. Step 6, right? Because your VP and your operations guy would start hounding you because they're going to say, now I'm seeing all the data. I'm now seeing all the spend. Now I'm worried that, and there's a potential it can go above, go beyond, right? So I want to make sure we have some guardrails in place to control costs, to put some governance over it. So they tell me, Franklin, can you devise a plan for us to approach it? What are the ways we can do that? So we come at them, providing them at least 3 ways. This is a tiered model, so they can go from 1 all the way to tier 3. My advice would be you don't necessarily have to do this across the board. You can select which project it makes sense to do so. It's a case-by-case basis, right? But I would suggest, I would tell my VP, I tell my team, start doing awareness. At the very least, you should have an AWS budgets in place. Understanding if you start running across that threshold, you can have it set at different intervals, like 80%, 100%, having it fire off an email or an SNS to you. Good. So at least now you know, even for developers, now you know something's happening. And you get reported in if you're reaching a certain point in your budget. Now, second part is alerting. Now that you know, you may want to start triggering alarms, CloudWatch alarms in particular. You can have them run 5-minute evaluation. If something persists for the 5 minutes, send me an alarm. Send me something. And with that, you can do token spike detection. And then at the same time, you'd be able to do notifications, whether Slack, PagerDuty. So something that's more real time. And the third part is more about enforcement. So I've seen companies do this where just because in the early, people are early using Bedrock, trying to understand the model, how to properly code it, prompt it. Now they're kind of seeing and want to employ a little bit more tighter enforcement, where you could, based off an alarm, it would trigger a Lambda that can apply a policy that would deny use. Now, I'm not saying do this for everything, right? Because you might have things in production, but you might have people doing stuff during the weekends you don't expect, or you want to enforce, they don't do that, you can do so. Or more or less be able to prevent a spike from happening. Like if there's a recent release running on test, you don't want to be having an agent start to do a loops for 6 hours, incurring a cost you don't really intend to. So doing that, being able to shut it off and then auto-restore once the alarm clears is very powerful. Okay, so those are guardrails. And this is how, if you have an interface with agent or for budgets at all in the past, this is what it looks like. Very easy to set up. You can define a budget. In this case, the budget was 5K. It tells you where you currently are, and then it will tell you how far along are you on the budget. Am I gonna go over that to just give you a forecast. And then the alerts, the warning, if there are any warnings glaring of something that happened within the last hour or so, that it also shows you that. So great feature to have in place. Okay. Okay, so now I'm kind of going to the tail end, which is the step 7. I say this because step 7 is important. I mean, we talk about attribution, right? We talk about we talked about being able to put some guardrails, governance around it. But really the important piece is for your VP to figure out, did it make sense to do that project? Are we making money out of that chatbot that we got so happy about when we released? But did it actually make sense to do that, right? It comes back to figuring out how your team is going to end up using or adopting this technology, right? A lot of customers in the beginning, they want to jump on the bandwagon, but the problem was ROI, or questions we keep on asking. When the first question we got asked was security, right? How it can be approved and used, indemnity, and all of that. But in the end, the users are thinking, now we have 30 use cases. We don't know which one would actually make sense to do, right? With the proper ROI, attribution, governance framework, then you can actually answer that question. You can come back and say, hey, I'm using Cloud Code, using Hero, I'm using Cursor, whatever. And I can now, I'm using Bedrock alongside it. I can now tell you how much you're spending, and then I can weigh it down. Did you actually improve or not? Okay, so that's the last step. But there's actually 3 pillars. I didn't start with the 3 pillars, but if you were going to start like consolidating this in your mind, it's really 3 pillars. First pillar is attribution. You want to see every dollar, right? If you're not doing that now, it's a scary thing. You're not sure where the money is going to, and your leadership probably should be asking. It means cur, tagging, and using profiles. Pillar 2 involves step 4 to 6. Try to lock it down using policies in place. We put real-time visibility in everything, so we know we can handle what's happening now. And then guardrails allow us to be able to see where things are headed and be able to corral it when needed. So that's pillar number 2, which is governance, controlling the spend. And then we have step 7, which I said at the tail end, really, I mean, it's one slider, but it talks about pillar 3, which is the ROI problem. When you talk to your leadership, your managers, your VPs, whoever that might be, you need to be speaking within these 3 pillars. It shouldn't be just talking about attribution. You can see this, you can see that. You should be speaking the same language they speak, which usually is talking about how can I see it, how can I control it, and ultimately why it makes sense to do that, right? So that's the native steps. What I showed you, though, is all done natively. There are a lot of third parties right now that can do this. But this is the way to do it natively within AWS. Okay, so encourage you now. This is like this is something that you can do quick. So it's like a quick checklist if you're wondering how would it look like if you're going to implement something like this. Okay, well, I think hopefully I did good on time. I think I have a little bit more time. If you guys have questions, I'm happy to answer them. If not, I'm happy to take questions after. Yes?
This new feature, and that's as of yesterday, or?
Oh, it was launched April 8th. So yes.
So I will see it. Usually it's a day late. It's kind of like the cur is usually a day or 2 late.
Yes.
So I will see that soonish.
You should. If it should be released now. It's not automatic. You have to go into the cur, enable that. There's that toggle. We don't necessarily enable it.
Okay.
For everybody right away. It's more opt-in.
Does it cost anything?
It will cost something, just for the storage. Remember, this is an extra column, so which means, but just S3.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, just minimal. There's nothing on top of it.
I would have to do that in the organization's account, right? So.
Yeah, wherever the billing data is configured. I'm guessing, yeah, that would be the organizational account.
So it can't just.
No, you probably don't have
all
that
of it.
visibility on the other organization account.
Okay. Great. That's great because right now we go through CloudWatch logs and figure out who did what. And
Which is heavy-handed, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And so that will replace that.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, a lot of customers have built their own bespoke to get around it, but with this recent release, makes it so much easier. So we kind of end up pushing it. That's why my talk was, I kept on hounding them. Are we releasing it today? Are we releasing it this week? Are we releasing it last week? So just 2 days ago, I had to like bake it in. So I had to like redo the whole thing. So that's good because this is a really good. Because I was kind of thinking, if this doesn't get released, what am I gonna? I'm gonna speak. Will I be able to mention it that it's coming or not? Right. So anyway, this is good. Made it on time. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Very, very interesting. I had a question. Maybe I missed it, but I think you focus a lot on tracking the costs down to the team and down to the specific person. It would be interesting to hear your take on spending limits. Let's say if you have a team or you have a specific person, probably maybe a team, where you want to put some limits. How would you address this topic?
Yeah, the guardrails part would be good, and it depends on the limit would be on a person or would be limit on a team or on a project, which is very common. Like you want to be able to like one for project at the beginning. If it's part of the discussion, you have set this project we expect to spend 5K. Create a budget in place, and then have the proper notification so you know are we getting near the budget. If we're not getting close to the budget, then you get notified and you revisit. Is this implementation correct? Should we be evaluating a different model? So you can control that way on the project level. I've seen customers on the user level, on the team level, they also have budgets in place. It's not as heavy-handed as what I see because they kind of wanted people to be able to explore, try it out. So that the guardrail that I talked about on enforcement were automatic, that you want to just shut down use. That's more heavy-handed, but that's intended for unintentional use. Like you really have a huge spike. And the intention there is not to really just to prevent, more to understand. Like what happened, learn from it, prevent it from happening again. So different levels, budgets, or automated metrics, and then shutting them down. So any more? What time is it? I think we have a few more, but I'm happy to return the time so you guys can, do whatever. Thank you. Appreciate it.